A single mother named Sienna trembles as she counts her last coins beside her feverish child, helpless when she doesn't have enough for the cashier. In desperation, she turns to put the cheap can of formula back, but her shaky hands slip powder splattering across the floor and drawing irritated stares. Just as Sienna freezes in confusion, the door bursts open. 5 Hell's Angels rush in. Their leader walks straight to her, glances at baby Sophia, then quietly pays for everything and buys the best formula, fever medicine, and food, beginning a journey that will change all 3 of their lives in ways no one expected. Before we go back, let us know where you're watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow I've got something extra special for you. The fluorescent lights in the pharmacy buzzed like angry wasps. Sienna Carter stood at the counter, her trembling fingers counting out crumpled $1 bills for the 3rd time. $18.25. That's all she had left until next Friday's paycheck. Behind her, Sophia screamed. Not the normal fussy cry of a tired baby, but the kind of desperate wail that made every head in the store turn. Sienna's daughter was burning up with fever, her little chest heaving with each labored breath. "Ma'am, the total is $23.50. The cashier said, her voice sharp with impatience. She was a heavy-set woman with bright orange lipstick that bled into the lines around her mouth. "Are you going to pay or not?" Sienna's hands shook harder as she stared at the can of formula on the counter. It wasn't even the good kind, just the cheapest generic brand that always made Sophia's stomach upset. But beggars couldn't be choosers, could they? I just need a minute," Sienna whispered, her voice barely audible over Sophia's crying. She dug through her coat pockets again, hoping to find some miracle quarters she'd somehow missed. Nothing, just lint and a broken hair tie. The woman behind her in line huffed loudly. "Some people shouldn't have kids if they can't afford them," she muttered to her companion, not even bothering to lower her voice. Sienna's cheeks burned. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the cracked linoleum floor. This wasn't supposed to be her life. 3 years ago, she'd had a job she loved, a nice apartment, hope for the future. Then she'd met Cole, and everything had turned to ash. "Listen, I don't have all day," the cashier snapped, reaching for the formula can. "If you can't pay, you need to move aside." Sienna's fingers closed around the can before the cashier could take it. Her baby needed this. Sophia's fever had been climbing all day, and the free clinic wouldn't see them until Monday. That was 3 days away. 3 days her daughter would spend hungry because Sienna couldn't afford both medicine and food. "Please," Sienna heard herself say, hating how pathetic she sounded. "I get paid on Friday. I can come back and pay you then. I swear I just need—" "Company policy, sweetheart. No credit." The cashier's smile was all teeth and no warmth. "Now, are we doing this or not?" Sienna's vision blurred. She blinked hard, refusing to cry in front of these strangers. Sophia's wails had turned to weak whimpers now, and somehow that was worse. Her daughter was giving up, too exhausted from fever to even cry properly anymore. The can slipped from Sienna's numb fingers. Time seemed to slow as it fell, spinning in lazy circles before hitting the floor with a metallic clang that echoed through the entire store. Formula powder exploded across the tiles like dirty snow. "Oh, for God's sake!" The cashier threw her hands up. "Now you're going to have to pay for that anyway." "That's destruction of store property." Sienna dropped to her knees, trying uselessly to scoop the powder back into the dented can. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold anything. Behind her, Sophia's crying had stopped completely. That terrified her more than anything. "I'm sorry," she whispered, though she didn't know who she was apologizing to anymore. "I'm so sorry." The pharmacy door slammed open with such force it cracked against the wall. The temperature in the store seemed to drop 10 degrees as 5 massive figures filled the doorway. Their leather jackets creaked as they moved, the Hell's Angels insignia on their backs, catching the harsh fluorescent light. The lead man was enormous, at least 6'4", with a salt and pepper beard that couldn't hide the hard line of his jaw. His eyes swept the store with the kind of cold assessment that made Sienna's survival instincts scream at her to run. But she couldn't run. She was still on her knees in a pile of baby formula, her daughter barely breathing in the stroller behind her. The big man's gaze locked onto Sophia. Something flickered across his face too fast for Sienna to identify. Pain, maybe, or recognition. His boots thundered across the floor. Sienna flinched, throwing her arm up instinctively to protect herself. She'd learned that reflex from Cole from too many nights when she hadn't moved fast enough. But the blow never came. Instead, the man crouched down beside her with surprising gentleness for someone his size. Up close, Sienna could see his eyes were gray like storm clouds. There were deep lines around them, the kind carved by years of either laughter or pain. She suspected it was the latter. "How old?" His voice was rough like gravel under tires. Sienna's mouth had gone dry. What? Your daughter. How old is she?" 11 months. The words came out automatically. Sienna's brain was still trying to catch up with what was happening. The man's jaw tightened. He stood abruptly, pulling a worn leather wallet from his jacket. When he turned to the counter, his movements were deliberate, controlled, dangerous. "Ring up the best fever medicine you've got," he told the cashier, his tone leaving no room for argument. "And the premium formula. 2 cans. The cashier's orange lips parted in shock. "Sir, Did I stutter?" He slapped a $100 bill on the counter. The sound cracked through the pharmacy like a gunshot. "And throw in some of those baby food pouches, the organic ones." One of his companions, a shorter man with a shaved head and a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, stepped forward. "Mace, you sure about this?" "Bear." The big man didn't even turn around. "Not now." The cashier scrambled to comply, her earlier hostility evaporating like morning fog. Within minutes, she'd bagged everything, her hands fumbling with the receipt. Mason, apparently his name, grabbed the bags and turned back to Sienna. She was still on the floor, frozen in place like a deer in headlights. He extended his free hand to her. "Can you stand?" Sienna stared at his hand. It was massive, scarred across the knuckles with faded tattoos creeping up from his wrist. Everything about this man screamed danger. She should refuse. She should grab Sophia and run. But Sophia's weak whimpers reminded her that she didn't have the luxury of pride anymore. She took his hand. His grip was firm but careful, and he pulled her to her feet without any effort at all. Her legs nearly buckled. The world tilted sideways for a second, and she had to grab the edge of the counter to steady herself. Mason's other hand shot out, catching her elbow before she could fall. His brow furrowed as he really looked at her, taking in the hollow cheeks, the dark circles under her eyes, the way her coat hung loose on a frame that was nothing but sharp angles and bones. "When's the last time you ate?" The question was simple, direct, but it hit Sienna like a punch to the chest. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. When was the last time? Yesterday morning, she'd had half a granola bar she'd found in her car. The day before that, she'd eaten the crust Sophia had left from her toast. Before that, God, she couldn't even remember. Her voice cracked. "I'm fine. I just need to—" "That wasn't what I asked." Mason's voice was quiet now, but there was steel underneath it. "When did you last eat a meal?" "A real one." Sienna's throat tightened. She wanted to lie, to tell him she'd eaten that morning, that she was perfectly capable of taking care of herself and her daughter. But the way he was looking at her with those storm gray eyes that seemed to see right through every defense she'd built up made the lies die on her tongue. "Friday," she whispered. "Last Friday. The diner where I work gave me a free shift meal. Today was Wednesday." Mason's jaw clenched so hard she could see the muscle jump beneath his beard. For a moment, something dangerous flashed across his face. Anger, but not at her, at something else, someone else. He thrust the bags into her arms with more force than necessary. Sienna stumbled back a step but managed to keep her grip. "Take these," he said, his voice rough. "All of it. The medicine, the formula, the food. I can't pay you back." The words came out automatically, a defense mechanism she'd learned over the past 6 months. Never accept help you can't repay. Never owe anyone anything. That's how they get control over you. "I don't have any money. I can't—" "Did I ask you for money?" Sienna flinched at his tone. Mason saw it, and something in his expression shifted. He took a breath, deliberately softening his voice when he spoke again. "I'm not asking you to pay me back. I'm asking you to feed your daughter and feed yourself. That's it." "But I don't even know you." Sienna's voice was barely above a whisper. She was aware of the other customers watching them, the cashier pretending to organize receipts, while her eyes darted between Sienna and the bikers. "Why would you help us?" Mason was quiet for a long moment. Behind him, his crew shifted uncomfortably. The man called Bear cleared his throat, but Mason ignored him. His eyes stayed locked on Sienna's face. "Because someone should," he finally said. His voice was low, rough, with an emotion Sienna couldn't identify. "And because looking at your little girl—" He glanced at Sophia, who had gone quiet, her fevered eyes half closed. She reminds me of someone. Sienna opened her mouth to ask what he meant, but the words caught in her throat. For the first time in 6 months, since she'd run from Cole in the middle of the night with nothing but a diaper bag, and her baby Sienna felt like someone was actually seeing her. Not the poverty, not the desperation, not the burden she'd become. Just her. A person. A mother trying to survive. Because you're standing here counting pennies to feed your sick kid while people judge you like you're the problem, Mason said quietly. Because you're shaking so hard you can barely stand, but you're still standing. Because someone should have asked you that question a long time ago, and nobody did. He stepped back, his crew moving with him like a single unit. Take care of that fever, he said, nodding toward Sophia, and eat something. You can't take care of her if you're falling over. Then he turned and walked out, his boots heavy on the pharmacy floor. The door chimed as it swung shut behind the 5 bikers, and suddenly the store felt too bright, too quiet. Sienna stood there, arms full of supplies she couldn't have afforded in a million years, still reeling from the kindness of a stranger who'd just shown her more compassion in 5 minutes than anyone had in months. Her hands were still shaking, but for the first time since she'd left Cole, someone had looked at her like she was a person worth saving. And God help her, she didn't know what to do with that. The parking lot was nearly empty when Sienna pushed through the pharmacy doors. The cold December air hit her like a slap, but she barely noticed. Sophia had finally stopped crying, her small body limp with exhaustion in the stroller. Sienna's hands fumbled with the bags Mason had given her, trying to hold on to everything while navigating the cracked asphalt. Her car sat in the far corner, exactly where she'd left it. A 1998 Honda Civic that had once been blue, maybe. Now it was just rust held together by prayer and duct tape. The passenger door didn't open anymore. The back window was covered with a trash bag and packing tape, and the heating system had died sometime in October. Sienna had loved this car once. It had been her first big purchase after college, back when she had dreams and a future. Now it was just another reminder of how far she'd fallen. She was fumbling with her keys when she heard the rumble of motorcycles. Her heart stopped. She turned slowly, already knowing what she'd see. 5 bikes pulled into the parking lot, their engines growling like caged animals. Mason was in the lead, his massive frame somehow graceful on the Harley beneath him. They pulled up alongside her car and killed the engines. The sudden silence was deafening. "You followed me," Sienna said. It wasn't a question. Mason swung off his bike with practiced ease. He didn't answer her. Instead, he walked straight to her Civic and crouched down, peering underneath. His hand came away black with oil. "Jesus Christ," he muttered. He stood up, his expression darker than before. "You're driving around with your kid in this." Sienna's spine stiffened. "It runs." "Barely." Mason walked around the car, his trained eye catching every problem. The bald tires, the cracks spreading across the windshield, the way the whole frame sagged to one side. "Your suspension's shot. You got an oil leak that could blow your engine any day. And that's not even mentioning whatever the hell is wrong with your exhaust." "I know it needs work," Sienna said, hating how defensive she sounded. "I'm saving up." "Saving up?" Mason's laugh was bitter. "You can't even afford formula, but you're saving up for car repairs." The words stung because they were true. Sienna looked away, focusing on getting Sophia out of the stroller and into the car seat. The baby was burning up her little face, flushed with fever. "How long has the heat been out?" Mason asked. Sienna didn't answer. She was trying to arrange the 3 blankets she kept in the back seat, layering them over Sophia to keep her warm. "How long?" Mason's voice was harder now. 2 months, Sienna admitted quietly. "Maybe 3. It's 20 degrees out here." "I know what the temperature is." Sienna's hands shook as she buckled Sophia in. "I know my car is a piece of junk. I know I should have better for my daughter. But this is what I have, okay? This is all I have." Her voice cracked on the last word. She squeezed her eyes shut, refusing to cry in front of this man again. She'd already shown him enough weakness for one day. She heard Mason sigh. When he spoke again, his voice was gentler. "I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I'm trying to make you understand that this car is dangerous. Your kid's already sick. You keep driving her around in a freezer on wheels, and that fever's gonna turn into pneumonia." Sienna knew he was right. She'd been terrified every time she started the car lately, wondering if today would be the day it finally died completely. But what choice did she have? The bus didn't run to the diner where she worked. She needed this car to survive. "I'll figure something out," she said, still not looking at him. "You don't have to figure it out alone." Sienna finally turned to face him. Mason was holding out the business card again, the same one he'd given her inside. "I told you to call me tomorrow. I meant it. I don't have money for a mechanic. And I told you I know a guy who owes me. Did you think I was lying?" "I don't know what to think." Sienna wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware of how thin her coat was. "I don't know why you're doing any of this. People don't just help strangers for no reason." "Maybe I'm not most people?" "You're a Hell's Angel." Sienna gestured at the patch on his jacket. "You're exactly the kind of person I should be running from." Mason's jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. "Yeah, I am. And you know what? That patch means I protect my own. It means when I give my word, I keep it. So when I tell you I'm going to help fix this car, I mean it. But I'm not yours to protect. Not yet." The words were quiet, but they hung in the cold air between them. Mason took a step closer. "Look, I get it. You don't know me. You got no reason to trust me. But your baby is sick. Your car is dying. And from the look of you, you haven't had a decent meal in days. So here's what's going to happen." Sienna's heart was pounding. Every instinct told her to get in the car and drive away. But Mason's gray eyes held her in place. "You're going to take my card," he continued. "Tomorrow morning, you're going to call me. I'm going to send someone to pick up your car and fix it. No charge. And while that's happening, you and your daughter are going to stay somewhere warm and safe until the car's ready." "I can't." "You can. And you will." Mason's voice dropped lower, more intense. "Because the alternative is you keep driving that death trap until it breaks down on some highway in the middle of the night. And then what? You gonna walk home with a sick baby in 20-degree weather?" Sienna's throat tightened. She'd had nightmares about exactly that scenario. The car dying, being stranded, Sophia getting sicker while they waited for help that never came. "Why do you care?" she whispered. Mason was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with something that sounded like pain. "Because 3 years ago, someone I loved was driving a car that shouldn't have been on the road. The brakes failed. They didn't make it." His hands clenched into fists. "So, yeah, when I see a mother and baby in a car that's one bad day away from killing them both, I care. I care a hell of a lot." Sienna's anger deflated like a punctured balloon. She looked at this massive, intimidating man and saw something she recognized. Grief. The kind that never really heals. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "Don't be sorry. Just call me." Mason pressed the card into her hand again. 8 a.m. I'll have someone at your place to pick up the car. Where do you live?" Sienna hesitated. Giving a stranger her address felt dangerous. But then again, everything about her life was dangerous now. "Riverside Apartments, Building C, Unit 12. Mason nodded. "I know where that is. Someone will be there at 8 to get the car. Should have it back to you in 2 days, 3 tops. And if I can't pay you back, then you can't pay me back." Mason turned to walk back to his bike. "Not everything's a transaction, Sienna. Sometimes people just help, because it's the right thing to do." He swung onto his Harley, and the other 4 bikers followed suit. The engines roared to life, shattering the quiet parking lot. "Mason," Sienna called out before she could stop herself. He looked back at her, one eyebrow raised. "Thank you for everything." Something softened in his expression. "Take care of that baby, and for God's sake, eat something." Then they were gone, the rumble of their bikes fading into the distance. Sienna stood in the cold parking lot staring at the business card in her hand. Mason Garrett, just a name and a number, but somehow it felt like a lifeline. She looked at her rusted Civic, then at Sophia bundled in her blankets, and made a decision. Tomorrow morning she'd call, because Mason was right. She couldn't let her pride kill her daughter. Weeks passed. True to his word, Mason had sent someone to fix Sienna's car. A massive biker named Bear had shown up at exactly 8 a.m., towed the Civic away, and returned it 3 days later running better than it had in years. The heat worked. The oil leak was fixed. There were new tires. When Sienna had tried to ask about payment, Bear had just shaken his head and rumbled, "Mason's orders. You got a problem with it, take it up with him." She hadn't. Instead, she'd thrown herself into work, picking up every shift she could at the diner. Sophia's fever had broken after 2 days on the medicine Mason bought. Things were starting to feel almost stable. That should have been her first warning that something was about to go wrong. It was a Thursday night, nearly midnight. The graveyard shift at Dee's Diner was always slow, just truckers and insomniacs looking for coffee and pie. Sienna moved between the tables with practiced efficiency, her body running on autopilot while her mind wandered. Sophia was asleep in her carrier near the register, watched over by Rita the night cook. It wasn't ideal bringing her baby to work, but Sienna couldn't afford a babysitter. Rita didn't mind, and the tips were better on nights. The bell above the door chimed. Sienna looked up automatically, her customer service smile already in place. It died on her lips. Cole Whitmore stood in the doorway like he owned the place. He looked exactly the same. Perfectly tailored suit, probably worth more than Sienna made in 3 months. Hair styled just right. $1,000 shoes that had no business being in a truck stop diner. Even his smile was the same, that cold expression that never reached his eyes. Sienna's coffee pot slipped from her numb fingers. It shattered on the floor, hot liquid and ceramic spreading across the tile. Sienna. Cole's voice was smooth, cultured. The voice she'd once thought was charming. It's been a while. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Her mind was screaming at her to run to grab Sophia and get out, but her body had frozen in place like a rabbit facing down a wolf. Cole walked toward her, his expensive shoes crunching on the broken ceramic. None of the other customers looked up. They were too absorbed in their phones or their food to notice the way Sienna had stopped breathing. "You're making a scene," Cole said mildly, gesturing at the spilled coffee. "That's not like you. You were always so careful not to make a scene." The emphasis on those last words made Sienna's stomach turn. How many times had he said that to her after he'd pushed her, after he'd grabbed her hard enough to bruise, after he'd locked her in their bedroom for hours because she'd embarrassed him at a business dinner? "Don't make a scene, Sienna. People will think you're crazy. Don't make a scene." "What are you doing here?" Her voice came out as barely a whisper. "Having coffee. Is that allowed?" Cole slid into a booth perfectly relaxed. "Or do you discriminate against paying customers?" Rita appeared from the kitchen, her weathered face creased with concern. "Sienna, honey, you okay? I heard the crash." "I'm fine," Sienna said automatically. The lie tasted like ash. Just clumsy. I'll get the mop." Rita shot Cole a suspicious look before disappearing into the back. Cole waited until she was gone before speaking again. "Sit down, Sienna. We need to talk." "I'm working." "Sit down." The pleasant mask slipped for just a second, showing the steel underneath. "Unless you want me to make a scene." Sienna's legs moved before her brain could catch up. She slid into the booth across from him, her hands clenched in her lap to hide their shaking. "There we go." Cole's smile returned. "That wasn't so hard, was it?" "How did you find me?" "Please. I'm a partner at one of the largest investment firms in the state. You think I couldn't track down my own wife?" "Ex-wife," Sienna corrected quietly. "Ah, yes, the divorce." Cole leaned back, his fingers drumming on the table. "You remember that, do you? The papers you filed 6 months ago? The restraining order you tried to get?" Sienna's blood ran cold. "Tried to get?" "It was denied. Insufficient evidence," the judge said. Cole's smile widened. "Funny how that works. Your word against mine. And I have such a sterling reputation. You're lying." "Am I?" Cole reached into his jacket and pulled out a manila folder. He slid it across the table with one finger. "See for yourself." Sienna's hands shook as she opened it. The first page was a court document, a restraining order application. Denied. The second page made her stomach drop through the floor. A petition for full custody of Sophia Whitmore. "No." The word came out strangled. "You can't. You never even wanted her. You said she was a mistake." "I said a lot of things when I was angry." Cole's voice was pleasant again, like they were discussing the weather. "But I've had time to think. Sophia is my daughter, my flesh and blood. And looking at your current situation," he gestured around the diner with distaste, "I don't think you're fit to raise her. I'm her mother. You're a waitress living in government housing who can barely afford to feed her." Cole pulled out more papers. "I have bank statements showing you're 3 months behind on bills. I have testimony from your landlord that you've been late on rent twice. I have evidence that you're raising my daughter in poverty while I can provide her with the best of everything." Sienna's vision blurred. "You did this. You're the reason I lost my job. You're the reason no one will hire me. You've been sabotaging me this whole time. I've been protecting my interests. There's a difference. She's not an interest. She's a person. Our daughter." "My daughter." Cole's eyes hardened. "And I'm going to get custody, Sienna. The hearing is in 3 weeks. My lawyers are very good, very expensive, and they have a compelling case about a mother who's clearly incapable of providing basic necessities." He pulled out another paper. This one was covered in photographs. Sienna in line at the food bank. Sienna counting change at the pharmacy. Sienna's broken down car. You've been following me. Documenting your situation for the court. Cole gathered up the papers neatly. But here's the thing, Sienna. I'm not unreasonable. We can make this all go away. How? Come back home. We'll tell the court it was all a misunderstanding. You were suffering from postpartum depression. You weren't thinking clearly. We'll withdraw the custody petition, tear up these photos, and go back to the way things were. Sienna's stomach heaved. You're insane if you think I would ever. 3 weeks, Cole interrupted. That's how long you have to decide. You can come back willingly, or you can watch me take Sophia away in court. Your choice. He stood up, smoothing down his suit jacket. Oh, and Sienna, I wouldn't bother trying to run again. I have people watching you. Your apartment, this diner, everywhere you go. And if you disappear with my daughter, I'll have you arrested for kidnapping. He pulled out a $50 bill and dropped it on the table. For the coffee I didn't get, and the broken pot. You really should be more careful. Then he was gone, the bell chiming cheerfully as the door swung shut behind him. Sienna sat in the booth staring at the papers spread across the table. The custody petition, the photographs, the evidence of her failure as a mother. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the documents. Rita came back with the mop, took one look at Sienna's face, and set it aside. Honey, what happened? Who was that man? My ex-husband. The words felt like broken glass in her throat. He wants to take Sophia. Can he do that? Sienna looked at the papers again. The court date, the lawyers' names. Cole's company letterhead promising to spare no expense in the fight for custody. Yeah, she whispered, I think he can. She made it through the rest of her shift on autopilot. When her relief finally showed up at 6 a.m., Sienna grabbed Sophia and practically ran to her car. Her hands were still shaking as she buckled the baby into her car seat. She sat behind the wheel, staring at nothing, her mind racing. Cole had money, lawyers, evidence. What did she have? A minimum wage job and a studio apartment in a bad neighborhood. He was going to win. He was going to take Sophia away, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Unless... Sienna pulled Mason's business card from her wallet. She'd kept it even though she'd told herself she'd never use it again, that she couldn't keep accepting help from a stranger. But Mason wasn't quite a stranger anymore, was he? He'd fixed her car. He'd shown her more kindness than anyone had in months. And he'd told her to call if she needed anything. Did this count as needing something? Sienna stared at the card until the numbers blurred. Then she pulled out her phone and dialed before she could change her mind. Mason answered on the second ring, his voice rough with sleep. Yeah, it's Sienna Carter. Her voice was shaking. You said to call if I needed help. Did you mean it? There was a pause. She heard rustling like he was sitting up. What happened? And Sienna, who'd spent 6 months being strong, who'd held herself together through poverty and fear and endless nights alone, finally broke. He found me, she whispered. Cole found me, and he's going to take my baby away. Mason's truck pulled into the diner parking lot 20 minutes later. Sienna was still sitting in her car, Sophia asleep in the back seat, the custody papers clutched in her shaking hands. The truck door slammed. Mason appeared at her window, his hair still messy from sleep, wearing jeans and a Hell's Angels hoodie instead of his usual leather jacket. He knocked gently on the glass. Sienna rolled down the window. You gonna sit in the car all day, or you gonna let me help? She looked up at him, this enormous man with his scarred knuckles and storm gray eyes, and something inside her cracked. I don't know what you can do. He has lawyers, money, everything. So do I. Let me see the papers. Sienna handed them over, watching his face as he read. His expression got darker with every page. When he reached the photographs, his jaw clenched so hard she heard his teeth grind. This bastard had you followed. He's been stalking you. He says he was documenting my situation for court. He was hunting you. Mason's voice was cold, dangerous, like you were prey. Mason, I can't fight him. I don't have... Yes, you do. He looked at her, his gaze intense. You have me. You have my crew. And you're about to have the best damn lawyer in the state. I can't afford... Did I ask you about money? Mason pulled out his phone. I'm calling Janet. She's a friend and she eats guys like Cole for breakfast. Why are you doing this? Sienna's voice cracked. You don't owe me anything. You already fixed my car. You already helped me. This is too much. Mason was quiet for a moment. He looked past her at Sophia, sleeping peacefully in her car seat, unaware that her entire world was about to be torn apart. "You know why I helped you that first day at the pharmacy?" he asked quietly. Sienna shook her head. "Because your daughter is 11 months old, same age my granddaughter was when she died." The words hung in the cold morning air. Sienna's breath caught. "The car accident you mentioned?" "Yeah." Mason's voice was rough. "My daughter Rachel and her baby Sophie, hit by a drunk driver in a luxury sedan. He ran a red light, T-boned them, and drove away, left them bleeding on the side of the road." "Oh my God." "Rachel died on impact, but Sophie," Mason's hands clenched into fists, "she lived for 3 hours. 3 hours crying for her mama while the paramedics tried to save her. She died in the ambulance." Sienna's eyes filled with tears. "Mason, I'm so sorry." "The guy who hit them was never caught. Rich bastard probably. Got his car fixed somewhere quiet, paid off the right people, and disappeared." Mason looked at her, and the pain in his eyes was almost unbearable to witness. "So when I see a mother trying to protect her baby from a rich bastard who thinks money makes him untouchable, yeah, I get involved, because nobody was there to protect my girls." He pulled open her car door. "Come on, we're going to the clubhouse. You're not staying in that apartment where Cole knows where to find you." "I can't just move into a biker clubhouse." "Why not? We got rooms upstairs. They're clean, they're safe, and Cole won't think to look for you there." Mason's tone left no room for argument. "Besides, you work nights. Who's watching Sophia while you're at the diner?" I bring her with me. Rita watches her." "A baby in a diner until 6 in the morning. That what Cole's lawyers are going to use against you in court." Sienna's stomach dropped. He was right. Everything Cole had said, everything in those papers, it was all true. She was barely surviving, and a good lawyer could make that look like negligence. "What am I supposed to do?" she whispered. "I'm exactly what he says I am. A broke waitress who can barely take care of her kid." "No," Mason's voice was firm. "You're a mother who's been sabotaged by her abuser. There's a difference, and Janet's going to make sure the court sees it." He held out his hand. "Trust me. Please." Sienna looked at his outstretched hand, scarred and calloused and steady. Then she looked at Sophia, still sleeping, still innocent, still depending on her to keep her safe. She took his hand. The Hells Angels clubhouse was not what Sienna expected. From the outside, it looked like a converted warehouse in an industrial part of town. But inside, it was surprisingly homey. There was a bar, yes, and a pool table and motorcycle parts scattered on every surface. But there were also worn couches, a big screen TV, and the smell of coffee brewing. Several bikers were scattered around the main room, even though it was barely 7 in the morning. They all looked up when Mason walked in with Sienna and Sophia. "Meeting," Mason called out. 5 minutes. Everyone." He led Sienna upstairs to a small apartment above the main floor. It had a bedroom, a tiny bathroom, and a kitchenette. Simple but clean. "It's not much," Mason said, "but the door locks and the windows don't face the street. You'll be safe here." Sienna set Sophia's carrier on the bed. Her daughter was starting to wake up, making small, fussy noises. "Mason, I can't stay here long term. I have to work. We'll figure it out. For now, you need to be somewhere Cole can't get to you." He checked his watch. "Janet should be here in an hour. You're going to tell her everything. And I mean everything. Every time he hit you, every threat he made, all of it." Sienna wrapped her arms around herself. "What if the court doesn't believe me? What if they think I'm making it up?" "Then we'll make them believe." Mason's expression was hard. "Cole thinks he's untouchable because he's rich. He's about to find out money doesn't mean shit when you're up against people who actually give a damn." Downstairs, Sienna could hear the rumble of voices as the bikers gathered. Mason headed for the door, then paused. "My daughter was 24 when she died. Sophie would have been 4 by now." His voice was quiet. "Every time I look at your little girl, I see my granddaughter. I couldn't save them, but I can sure as hell save Sophia." Then he was gone, his boots heavy on the stairs. Sienna sat on the edge of the bed watching Sophia wake up fully. Her daughter's dark eyes blinked open, focused on her face, and broke into a gummy smile. "Hey, baby girl," Sienna whispered, picking her up. "We're gonna be okay. We have to be." But even as she said it, she wasn't sure she believed it. Janet Rivera arrived exactly 1 hour later. She was a short, compact woman in her 50s, with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She carried a leather briefcase and radiated the kind of competence that made Sienna sit up straighter. "Miss Carter." Janet's handshake was firm. Mason filled me in on the basics. Now, I need to hear it from you. Everything. Start from the beginning." For the next 2 hours, Sienna talked. She told Janet about meeting Cole at a charity event where she'd been working as a caterer, about the whirlwind romance, the expensive dates, the feeling that she'd finally found someone who saw her as special. She told her about the wedding 6 months later, how Cole had insisted she quit her job because his wife didn't need to work, how isolated she'd become when all her friends drifted away and Cole discouraged her from making new ones. She told her about the first time he'd grabbed her arm hard enough to bruise, how he'd apologized, blamed stress at work, bought her expensive jewelry to make up for it, how she'd believed him. She told her about the escalation, the shoving, the locked doors, the times he'd withheld her phone and car keys to keep her home, the way he controlled every aspect of her life while maintaining a perfect public image. And she told her about the night she'd finally run, 8 months pregnant after Cole had pushed her into a wall during an argument, the terror that he might hurt the baby, the desperate midnight escape with nothing but the clothes on her back and the baby supplies she could carry. Janet took notes in a precise, neat hand. She didn't interrupt, didn't show shock or disbelief, just listened and wrote. "Did you ever call the police?" she asked when Sienna finished. "Twice. They came, talked to Cole, left. He's very charming, very convincing." Sienna's voice was bitter. "The second time the officer told me I should try to work things out with my husband, that I seemed overwrought. Did you take pictures of your injuries?" "A few, on my phone. But Cole found them and deleted them. He destroyed my phone after that, said I was being paranoid." "Do you have any witnesses, anyone who saw him hurt you?" Sienna shook her head. "He was always careful, never in public, never where anyone could see." Janet tapped her pen against her notepad. "That makes things harder, but not impossible. The pattern of control is clear. The financial abuse, the isolation, the escalation. A good judge will see it." "What about the custody petition? He has proof I'm poor. That I'm struggling." "Being poor isn't a crime, Miss Carter, and being rich doesn't make someone a fit parent." Janet's eyes were hard. "We're going to build a case showing that Cole is an abuser who sees your daughter as a possession, not a person. That his interest in custody is about controlling you, not loving Sophia." "But how? I don't have evidence. I don't have anything." "You have your testimony. You have medical records from your prenatal visits that might show injuries. You have your flight pattern, the restraining order, attempt the fact that Cole made no effort to see his daughter for 6 months until it became useful for him." Janet stood up. "And you have me. I've been doing this for 20 years. I know how men like Cole operate." She gathered her papers. "I need you to write down everything you can remember. Dates, times, specific incidents. Be as detailed as possible. And, Miss Carter," Janet's expression softened slightly, "you're not alone in this anymore. Understand?" Sienna's throat tightened. "Why are you helping me? Did Mason pay you?" "Mason asked me to help. That's all I needed to hear." Janet headed for the door. "He saved my son's life 10 years ago. Kid was running with a bad crowd headed for prison or worse. Mason straightened him out, gave him a job, turned him around, so when Mason calls, I answer. It's that simple." After she left, Sienna sat in the small apartment staring at the blank notebook Janet had given her. Write everything down. Every moment of abuse, every threat, every time Cole had made her feel small and worthless and trapped. She picked up the pen and started writing. Downstairs, she could hear the rumble of voices. The Hell's Angels planning their next move. Strangers, really. Men she'd been taught to fear. But they were fighting for her. Fighting for Sophia. Maybe family wasn't about blood after all. Maybe it was about who stood beside you when everything else fell apart. Sienna kept writing. Next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Janet filed a countermotion documenting Cole's abuse and arguing that his custody petition was harassment. Sienna continued working at the diner, but now Bear, or one of the other bikers, drove her to and from shifts. Sophia stayed at the clubhouse with Mason, who turned out to be surprisingly good with babies. "Had a daughter, remember?" he'd said gruffly when Sienna had expressed surprise at how easily he handled Sophia. "Some things you don't forget." Everything seemed to be going as well as it could. Then the photos arrived. Janet called Sienna into her office on a Tuesday afternoon. Her expression was grim. "Cole's lawyers sent new evidence. You need to see this." She spread a series of photographs across her desk. Sienna felt her blood run cold. The first photo showed her walking into the Hell's Angels clubhouse, Sophia in her arms. The second showed her getting on the back of Mason's motorcycle. The third showed her sitting at a table with 5 bikers, all of them in their full leather and patches. "Oh, God," Sienna whispered. "There's more." Janet pulled out a document. "Cole's lawyers are arguing that you've moved into a criminal organization's headquarters. They're calling the Hells Angels a gang. They're painting you as an unfit mother who's exposing Sophia to dangerous criminals. That's not fair. They're helping me. They're good people. I know that. You know that. But a judge looking at these photos?" Janet shook her head. "This is bad, Sienna. This is exactly the kind of thing that could lose you custody." Sienna sank into a chair. "What do I do?" "We fight back. We show that you moved here for safety, not because you joined a biker gang. We emphasize Mason's legitimate businesses, the fact that none of the Angels have recent criminal records. We make the court see this for what it is, a desperate woman accepting help from good people." "Will it work?" Janet was quiet for a moment. "I don't know. Cole's lawyers are good. And these photos, they tell a story that's easy to believe. Troubled mother falls in with bad crowd, puts child at risk." "So he's winning." "He thinks he is." Janet gathered up the photos. "But he doesn't know what we're planning." "What are we planning?" "I'm still working on that part." 3 days before the custody hearing, Cole's team made their move on the media front. Sienna was at the diner when Rita called her into the back, her face pale. "Honey, you need to see this." She held up her phone. On the screen was a local news website. The headline made Sienna's stomach drop. "Local businessman fights for daughter's safety from biker gang." The article painted Cole as a heartbroken father trying to rescue his daughter from an ex-wife who'd fallen into a dangerous lifestyle. There were quotes from anonymous neighbors saying they'd seen Sienna with rough-looking men on motorcycles. There were mentions of the Hells Angels history carefully phrased to sound ominous without being actionable. And there was a photo of Cole looking devastated and dignified in a tailored suit standing outside his office. "He's destroying me," Sienna whispered. "Everyone's going to think I'm a terrible mother." Her phone buzzed. "Mason, did you see the article?" His voice was tight with anger. "Yeah. Don't worry about it. We're handling it." "How, Mason? He's turning this into a media circus. The judge is going to see this." "Let him play his games. We're playing a different game entirely." "What does that mean?" "It means Janet and I found something big. We'll talk when you get home." Home. He'd called the clubhouse home. When Sienna got back to the clubhouse that night, she found Mason and Janet in the main room, surrounded by papers and laptop computers. Bear and 2 other bikers were there too, all of them looking serious. "What's going on?" Sienna asked. Mason looked up and there was something dangerous in his eyes. "Tell me about the night you left Cole, the night you ran. What exactly happened?" Sienna's mind went back to that terrible night. "We had an argument about the baby. He said I was getting fat, that I was embarrassing him at his work functions. I told him I was 8 months pregnant. What did he expect? He got angry, pushed me. I hit the wall hard enough to see stars." "What time was this?" "Around 11 p.m. Why, Mason and Janet exchanged glances. "What date?" Janet asked. "October 15th, 3 years ago. I remember because it was our anniversary. He'd taken me to dinner earlier, everything was fine. And then," Sienna swallowed hard. "Why are you asking me this?" Mason pulled out a file. His hands were shaking slightly, which terrified Sienna more than anything. She'd never seen Mason shake. "October 15th, 3 years ago. At approximately 11:45 p.m., there was a hit-and-run accident on Highway 94. A drunk driver in a luxury sedan ran a red light and T-boned a Honda Accord. The driver and passenger died. The drunk driver fled the scene and was never caught." Sienna's breath stopped. "Your daughter." "My daughter and granddaughter." Mason's voice was rough. "The police found paint transfer on Rachel's car. Black paint from a luxury sedan, but they never found the car, never found the driver." He pulled out another paper. "Cole Whitmore owns 6 cars. One of them is a black Mercedes S-Class. On October 16th, 3 years ago, that Mercedes was brought to a high-end auto body shop for minor repairs. The shop owner owes me a favor. He remembered the car because the damage was extensive, not minor at all." Sienna's hand flew to her mouth. "No, the timeline fits," Janet said quietly. "Cole fought with you around 11. He left the house angry, probably drunk. At 11:45, he ran a red light and killed 2 people. Then he drove straight to a discreet repair shop to hide the evidence." "Oh my God." Sienna felt like she was going to be sick. "Mason, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." "You didn't know. How could you?" Mason's jaw was tight. "But now we do. And we're going to prove it. How it's been 3 years. The body shop owner kept records, detailed ones including photos of the damage before repair, and he's willing to testify. For a price. How much? Sienna asked. Already paid, Mason said shortly. What matters is we have proof. Physical evidence that Cole's car was damaged in a collision on the same night my family died. We have repair records showing he tried to hide it, and we have your testimony that he left the house drunk and angry that night. But that's not enough for a criminal trial, Janet warned. We need more. DNA evidence from the crash scene witnesses something concrete. Then we find it. Mason's voice was cold hard. We find it, and we bury him. Bear spoke up from the corner. Mace, you sure about this? If we push too hard, Cole might run, or he might come after Sienna harder. He's not running, and he's not touching her. Mason looked at Sienna. I promised I'd protect you and Sophia. I keep my promises. But I need to know if you're okay with this. With us going after Cole for what he did to my family. Sienna thought about Rachel and baby Sophie dying on a dark highway while their killer drove away. She thought about Cole, who'd killed 2 innocent people and never shown a moment of remorse, who'd probably gone home, showered, and gone to sleep like nothing had happened. I'm okay with it, she said quietly. More than okay. He needs to pay for what he did. To your family. To me. To everyone he's ever hurt. Mason nodded slowly. Then we're going to war. Janet, how do we get this in front of the judge? Carefully. Very carefully. Janet gathered up the papers. This is explosive. If we play it wrong, it could backfire. But if we play it right, a fierce smile crossed her face. If we play it right, Cole Whitmore is going down, and we're going to make sure the whole world is watching when it happens. Custody hearing was held in a gray courthouse that smelled like old wood and fear. Sienna sat at the plaintiff's table with Janet, her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles were white. Across the aisle, Cole sat with his team of 3 lawyers, all of them in expensive suits. Mason sat in the gallery behind Sienna, along with Bear and several other angels. They'd all worn their cleanest clothes, but there was no hiding what they were. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Coleman, had given them a long look when they'd entered. Cole's lead attorney, a silver-haired man named Morrison, stood up for his opening statement. Your Honor, this case is simple. Mr. Whitmore is a successful businessman and devoted father who is seeking custody of his daughter because his ex-wife has proven herself incapable of providing a safe, stable environment. Miss Carter is unemployed. She works at a diner. Janet interrupted. A minimum wage job at a truck stop, Morrison continued smoothly, where she brings her infant daughter to work in the middle of the night because she cannot afford childcare. She lives in government housing. She associates with known criminals. He pulled out the photographs, the ones of Sienna at the clubhouse on Mason's motorcycle, surrounded by bikers. These photos show Miss Carter has moved herself and young Sophia into the headquarters of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club, a group with a well-documented history of criminal activity. Objection, Janet said. The Hells Angels present in this courtroom have no recent criminal records. Miss Carter accepted temporary housing from friends during a crisis. That's not a crime. Friends. Morrison's smile was sharp. Miss Carter has known these men for less than a month. Yet she's comfortable raising her daughter in their clubhouse surrounded by motorcycles, alcohol, and who knows what else. Judge Coleman frowned. Miss Rivera, do you have a response? Yes, Your Honor. Miss Carter accepted help from good people when she was fleeing an abuser. The fact that they ride motorcycles doesn't make them criminals. The fact that they offered shelter to a woman in need makes them heroes. Heroes who just happened to be members of a notorious biker gang. Morrison shot back. He pulled out more photos. Your Honor, I have evidence that Miss Carter has been seen riding on the back of motorcycles without a helmet with her infant daughter. I have witnesses who say they've seen her drinking at the clubhouse bar. That's a lie, Sienna burst out. Janet put a hand on her arm. Do you have proof of these allegations? Judge Coleman asked. Morrison handed over documents. Sworn statements from neighbors and witnesses. Janet stood up. Your Honor, may I see those statements? As she read them, her expression grew darker. Sienna knew what she was seeing. Lies. Carefully constructed lies that painted her as a reckless mother endangering her child. Your Honor, Janet said quietly, these statements are false. We can prove. You'll have your chance to present your case, Miss Rivera. Judge Coleman looked troubled. Mr. Morrison, continue. For the next hour, Morrison systematically destroyed Sienna's character. He painted her as unstable, poor, desperate. He brought up her failed restraining order against Cole, spinning it as proof that she was vindictive and dishonest. He showed bank statements proving she was behind on bills. And through it all, Cole sat there looking sad and concerned, like a father genuinely worried about his daughter's welfare. Sienna felt herself sinking. Janet had warned her this would be hard, but she hadn't expected to feel so helpless. Every word Morrison said was designed to make her look like a terrible mother, and the worst part was, some of it was true. She was poor. She was struggling. She had accepted help from bikers. Then it was time for Cole to testify. He took the stand with perfect composure, his hand steady on the Bible, as he swore to tell the truth. "Mr. Whitmore," Morrison began, "can you explain why you're seeking custody of your daughter?" "Because I love her." Cole's voice was sincere, almost breaking. "Sophia is my little girl, and I'm terrified for her safety. Sienna isn't a bad person, but she's made bad choices, dangerous choices. I just want my daughter to have the stable, safe home she deserves." "Has Miss Carter ever prevented you from seeing Sophia?" "Yes, she left me without warning, took our daughter, and disappeared for 6 months. I had no idea where they were, no idea if Sophia was safe or even alive." Sienna wanted to scream. That wasn't what happened. She'd left because she was afraid he'd hurt the baby. But when she opened her mouth, Janet squeezed her hand hard. "Wait," Janet whispered. "Trust me." Morrison asked a few more softball questions, letting Cole paint himself as a concerned father. Then he yielded to Janet for cross-examination. Janet stood slowly. She walked to the evidence table and picked up a folder. "Mr. Whitmore," she said pleasantly, "you claim you were desperate to find your daughter, to ensure she was safe." "Yes. Yet you made no missing persons report. You didn't hire a private investigator until 3 months after Miss Carter left. You didn't file for custody until last month. That doesn't seem very desperate. I was trying to give Sienna space, to let her calm down." "Calm down from what?" "From whatever had upset her. I didn't know why she left." "Really?" Janet pulled out papers. "You didn't know these are text messages from you to Miss Carter's phone, sent the night she left. Would you like me to read them to the court?" Cole's composure slipped slightly. "I don't recall." "You'll regret this." "You can't hide from me. I'll find you and make you sorry. That's what you texted the night Miss Carter fled with your infant daughter." Janet's voice was sharp. "Does that sound like a confused husband or a threatening abuser?" Objection. Morrison jumped up. "Relevance. This hearing is about custody, not their marriage. It's relevant because it shows Mr. Whitmore's pattern of control and intimidation." Janet shot back. "Your Honor, may I continue?" Judge Coleman looked at Cole with new interest. "Overruled. Continue, Miss Rivera." Janet pulled out more papers. "Mr. Whitmore, where were you on the night of October 15th, 3 years ago?" Cole blinked. "I have no idea. That was years ago." "Let me refresh your memory. That was the night you and Miss Carter had a fight. The night you pushed her into a wall while she was 8 months pregnant. Does that ring a bell?" Objection. "That's an unproven allegation." "I'll withdraw it," Janet said smoothly. "Mr. Whitmore, do you own a black Mercedes S-Class?" "Yes. So what? On October 16th, 3 years ago, you brought that car to Prestige Auto Body for repairs, correct?" Cole's face went pale. I don't remember." "You don't remember, let me help you." Janet pulled out photographs. "These photos show extensive front-end damage to your Mercedes, the kind of damage consistent with a high-speed collision. What happened to your car, Mr. Whitmore?" It was a parking lot accident. Someone hit me." "Really? Because you told the repair shop it was a deer strike on the highway." "I misspoke." "You misspoke." Janet's voice was cold now. "Or you lied to cover up what really happened." "Your Honor, what is the point of this?" Morrison was on his feet again. "This has nothing to do with custody." "It has everything to do with custody," Janet said. "Because on October 15th at 11:45 p.m., there was a fatal hit-and-run on Highway 94. A black luxury sedan ran a red light and killed 2 people. The driver fled the scene and was never caught. And less than 12 hours later, Mr. Whitmore brought his black luxury sedan in for repairs to hide collision damage." The courtroom went dead silent. Cole was white as a sheet. That's a conspiracy theory. You have no proof." "Don't I?" Janet pulled out the repair shop owner's testimony. "This document details the damage to your car, front-end impact, broken headlight, paint transfer from another vehicle, and this." She held up another photo. "This is paint from the victim's car, black paint. The same shade as your Mercedes. Judge Coleman leaned forward. Miss Rivera, are you accusing Mr. Whitmore of vehicular manslaughter? I'm presenting evidence that he may have been involved in a hit and run that killed 2 people. Evidence that shows he's willing to lie, to cover up his crimes, to destroy evidence. Is that the kind of man who should have custody of a child? Morrison was frantically whispering to Cole. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Judge Coleman banged her gavel. Order Miss Rivera, this is highly irregular. If you have evidence of a crime, you should take it to the police, not present it in a custody hearing. We have your honor. As of this morning, the police have reopened the investigation into the hit and run. They're requesting Mr. Whitmore's presence for questioning. On cue, the courtroom doors opened. 2 police officers walked in. Cole stood up his chair, scraping loudly. This is insane. I wasn't. Mr. Whitmore, one of the officers said, we need you to come with us. We have some questions about a 2021 incident. I have a court hearing. The hearing can be rescheduled, Judge Coleman said. She was staring at Cole with barely concealed disgust. Officers, please escort Mr. Whitmore out. As the police led Cole away, he turned and looked at Sienna. The mask had finally slipped. His face was twisted with rage and hatred. You did this, he hissed. You and your biker trash. I'll destroy you for this. That's enough, one of the officers said, pulling him toward the door. The courtroom was in chaos. Morrison and his team were frantically gathering papers. Judge Coleman was conferring with her clerk, and Sienna sat frozen, unable to believe what had just happened. Mason leaned forward from his seat in the gallery. Told you we'd handle it, he said quietly. Janet sat down beside Sienna. The custody hearing is suspended pending the criminal investigation, and given what just came out, I don't think Cole's going to be seeking custody anymore. He's going to be too busy trying to stay out of prison. Sienna's hands were shaking. Is it over? Not yet, but we're winning. Janet smiled. You did good. You trusted me. You told your truth. And now Cole's facing justice. Sienna looked back at Mason. He was staring at the door where the police had taken Cole, his expression unreadable. But there were tears in his eyes. For Rachel. For Sophie. For justice 3 years late, but finally coming. The courtroom chaos took hours to settle. Judge Coleman suspended the custody hearing indefinitely while the criminal investigation proceeded. Cole was released after questioning, but his passport was confiscated and he was forbidden from leaving the state. More importantly, he was forbidden from contacting Sienna or Sophia. But the legal system moved slowly. Despite Janet's best efforts, there were still procedures to follow. Sophia, as a minor involved in a contested custody case, was temporarily placed in protective services while the court sorted out the mess. It's standard procedure, Janet explained, but her voice was heavy. Until the custody question is resolved, the court wants Sophia in a neutral environment. No. Sienna's voice cracked. No, she's my daughter. She needs to be with me. I know, and we're going to fight this. But for now, Janet's expression was sympathetic. You need to let them do their job. It's only temporary. Temporary felt like forever. The social worker who came to collect Sophia was kind, at least. A middle-aged woman with soft eyes who promised Sienna she'd take good care of the baby. It's just a few days, she said. While the judge reviews everything, you'll get her back. But when Sienna tried to hand Sophia over, her daughter knew something was wrong. Sophia, who at 11 months was just starting to understand, the world clung to her mother's shirt with tiny fists and screamed, "Mama, mama." It was one of her first real words, and it broke Sienna's heart. I know, baby. I know. Sienna was crying too, trying to pry Sophia's fingers loose while her whole body shook. It's okay. Mommy's here. Mommy loves you. But Sophia wouldn't let go. The social worker had to help, gently loosening the baby's grip while Sophia wailed. The sound echoed through the courthouse hallway, drawing stares from everyone passing by. Mason stepped forward. Is this really necessary? The kid's terrified. I'm sorry, the social worker said. Court order. I don't have a choice. When they finally got Sophia free, the baby's screams reached a pitch that made Sienna's ears ring. Sophia reached for her arms, outstretched face red and soaked with tears. Mama, mama. Sienna collapsed, just dropped to her knees on the cold courthouse floor, sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe. She'd survived Cole's abuse. She'd survived poverty and fear and 6 months of running. But this watching her baby being taken away while screaming for her, this was too much. Mason caught her before she hit the ground completely. He knelt beside her, one massive arm around her shoulders while she fell apart. "I can't," Sienna gasped between sobs. "I can't do this. I can't let them take her." "It's temporary," Mason said, but his voice was rough. "Janet's gonna fix this. We're gonna get her back." "You don't know that. What if the judge decides I'm unfit? What if I lose her forever?" "You're not going to lose her." Mason's grip tightened. "I swear to God, Sienna, you're not going to lose that baby." But his promise felt hollow against the sound of Sophia's fading screams as the social worker carried her away. 3 days. The longest 3 days of Sienna's life. She stayed at the clubhouse because going back to her apartment felt impossible without Sophia. The other angels gave her space, but she could feel their sympathy. Bear brought her food she didn't eat. Mason sat with her for hours, not talking, just present. Janet worked around the clock, filing emergency motions and calling in every favor she had. On the 3rd day, she called with news. "Emergency hearing, tomorrow at 9 a.m. Judge Coleman agreed to an expedited review." What does that mean? It means we present our case for why you should have custody. We show that Cole is the danger, not you. And if we're lucky, you get Sophia back tomorrow. If we're lucky. The words haunted Sienna all night. The courtroom was packed the next morning. Mason and his crew filled one entire row, all of them in clean clothes, their expressions serious. Sarah Mason's ex-wife was there too. She'd reached out after hearing about the case, offering to testify. Cole wasn't there. He was still dealing with the reopened hit-and-run investigation, his lawyers fighting to keep him out of jail. Judge Coleman entered, and everyone stood. When they sat again, the judge looked directly at Sienna. "Miss Carter, I've reviewed all the evidence. I've read the testimonies. I've looked at the photographs and the financial records and everything both sides have presented." She paused. "I've also spent the last 3 days reviewing the police investigation into Mr. Whitmore's possible involvement in a fatal hit-and-run." She pulled out a document. "Based on new evidence, including paint analysis and witness testimony, the police have enough probable cause to charge Mr. Whitmore with vehicular manslaughter and leaving the scene of a fatal accident. An arrest warrant will be issued this afternoon." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Sienna's hands clenched in her lap. "As for the custody matter," Judge Coleman continued, "I find Mr. Whitmore's petition to be without merit. The evidence shows a pattern of abuse control and manipulation. His sudden interest in his daughter appears to be motivated by a desire to punish Miss Carter, not by genuine parental concern." She looked at Sienna. "Miss Carter, you're not perfect. You're struggling financially, and you've made some unconventional choices. But nothing I've seen suggests you're an unfit mother. On the contrary, you've done everything in your power to protect your daughter from an abuser." Sienna couldn't breathe. "I'm granting you full custody of Sophia Carter. Mr. Whitmore's parental rights are suspended pending the outcome of the criminal trial. If he's convicted, I'll recommend permanent termination of those rights." The gavel came down. "This court is adjourned." For a moment, Sienna couldn't move. Then Janet was pulling her to her feet, smiling. "You won. It's over. Sophia's yours." The courtroom doors opened. The social worker entered carrying Sophia. The baby was fussy, clearly not having enjoyed her 3 days away from her mother. But when Sophia saw Sienna, her whole face lit up. "Mama!" Sienna ran. She crossed the courtroom in seconds and took her daughter from the social worker's arms. Sophia buried her face in Sienna's neck, her small body relaxing completely. "I've got you, baby," Sienna whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Mama's got you. I'm never letting go again." Behind her, she heard Mason's voice, thick with emotion. "Damn right you're not." Sienna turned still, holding Sophia, and saw Mason standing there with his crew. These rough, intimidating men, all of them watching with soft eyes. "Thank you," she said. "All of you. I don't know how to ever repay." "Family doesn't repay family," Bear said gruffly. "We just take care of each other." Mason stepped forward. He looked at Sophia, who was peeking at him with wide eyes from the safety of her mother's arms. "Hey there, little one," he said softly. "You gave us quite a scare." Sophia reached out one small hand and grabbed Mason's finger. She held on tight, just like she'd held on to Sienna in the courthouse hallway 3 days ago. And Mason, this huge man who'd seen so much pain, who'd lost so much, smiled. "Yeah," he said quietly, "family takes care of each other." Months later, Sienna stood in the garage of Angel's Auto Repair checking inventory. It was her garage now, or at least she managed it. Mason had opened the shop 3 months ago as a legitimate business front, and he'd put Sienna in charge. "You're organized," he'd said. "You're smart, and you need a real job with real pay. So, here you go." The pay was more than real. It was 3 times what she'd made at the diner. Enough to move into a decent apartment. Enough to buy Sophia new clothes and good food and all the things Sienna had been unable to provide before. Enough to start building a real life. "Boss," one of the mechanics, a young guy named Tommy, who was working off community service, called out, "Someone's here to see you." Sienna walked into the main garage. Mason was there, holding Sophia on his shoulders. The baby was laughing, her hands tangled in his hair. "Higher," she demanded. At 17 months old, Sophia was fearless, especially with Mason. "Any higher and you'll hit the ceiling, squirt," Mason rumbled, but he bounced a little, making her shriek with delight. Sienna couldn't help smiling. The first time Mason had offered to watch Sophia while Sienna worked, she'd been nervous. But watching them together, seeing how gentle he was, how patient, had eased her fears. He'd never replace Sophia's father. Cole was in prison now, serving 10 years for vehicular manslaughter and leaving the scene of an accident. The civil suit Rachel's family had filed would ensure he'd never be wealthy again. But Mason was something better than a father. He was family. "Ready to go?" Mason asked. "Go where?" "Upstairs. Got something to show you." The clubhouse had changed over the past 6 months. It was still rough around the edges, still smelled like motor oil and leather, but there were new touches, a bookshelf full of kids' books, a high chair in the kitchen, toys scattered in corners. Mason led her to the balcony overlooking the main floor. Below, the Angels were setting up for their weekly barbecue. Bear was arguing with another biker about the proper way to season ribs. Someone's music was playing too loud. It was chaotic and loud, and completely unlike anywhere Sienna had imagined herself living. It was home. "Close your eyes," Mason said. "Why?" "Just do it." Sienna closed her eyes. She felt Mason press something into her hand, something small and metallic on a chain. "Okay, look." She opened her eyes. In her palm was a silver necklace with a pendant shaped like angel wings. Simple, elegant, and clearly expensive. "Mason, I can't." "It was Rachel's," he said quietly. "She wore it every day. Said it was her lucky charm." His voice cracked slightly. "Lot of good it did her in the end." Sienna started to hand it back. "Then you should keep it." "No." Mason gently closed her fingers around the necklace. "Rachel would have liked you. She would have wanted you to have this. And I think—" He paused, looking out over the clubhouse. "I think she'd be glad that something good came from all that pain." Sienna's eyes filled with tears. "Mason, you saved me," he said. "Not the other way around. When you walked into that pharmacy with your sick kid and your empty wallet, I was drowning. I'd been drowning for 3 years, choking on grief and rage and guilt. And then I saw Sophia, and I saw a chance to do something right, to save someone the way I couldn't save my girls." He looked at her, his gray eyes wet. "You gave me a purpose again. You gave me a family. So thank you." Sienna put on the necklace. The angel wings settled against her chest, warm from Mason's hand. "Family isn't about blood," she said softly. "No," Mason agreed. "It's about who shows up when everything falls apart, who stands between you and the monsters, who loves you even when you're broken." Below them, Sophia had escaped from whoever was watching her and was toddling toward the food table with single-minded determination. Bear scooped her up, making her giggle. "Bear down." "Nice try, Munchkin. You ain't getting hot dogs before dinner." Sienna laughed. "I should go rescue him." "Let him suffer. He needs the practice." Mason leaned against the railing. "You know, I used to think the Angels were my only family, my brothers in the club, but it's bigger than that now. It's you. It's Sophia. It's all of us, this messy, broken, beautiful group of people who somehow fit together. Like a real family," Sienna said. "Exactly like a real family." They stood there in comfortable silence, watching the chaos below. Someone had started a water gun fight. Sophia was shrieking with laughter. The smell of barbecue drifted up from the grill. Sienna touched the angel wings at her throat. She thought about Cole rotting in prison. She thought about the pharmacy parking lot 6 months ago, when she'd been at her absolute lowest. She thought about all the moments of terror and despair that had led her here, and she realized she wouldn't change any of it, because all that pain, all that fear, it had brought her to this moment, to this family, to this place where she finally truly belonged. "Hey, Sienna," Bear called up. "You want your kid back, or can I keep her?" "You can keep her," Sienna called back. "Don't tempt me," Mason chuckled. "Come on, let's go down before he actually tries to adopt her." As they walked down the stairs together, Sophia saw them and broke free from Bear's grasp. She ran toward Sienna on unsteady legs, arms outstretched. "Mama Mace!" Sienna scooped her up, and Mason ruffled her hair. Sophia beamed at both of them, secure in the knowledge that she was loved. And Sienna, who had spent so long feeling like a burden, like someone who didn't belong anywhere, finally understood what family really meant. It wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about blood. It wasn't even about having your life together. It was about showing up, about protecting each other, about being there when it mattered most. It was about a group of bikers who'd taken in a desperate woman and her baby and said, "You're one of us now." It was about angel wings and second chances and the strange, wonderful ways that broken people could heal each other. Sienna looked around at her family, her real family, and smiled. She was home.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.